I'm Heidi Hutner, and this is Coffee with Hx2. And today I'll be speaking with J. Drew Lanham, the author of Home Place, Memoirs of a Colored Man's Love Affair with Nature. He's a PhD in Forest Reserve Resources. He has an MS in zoology, a BA in zoology, and he teaches conservation ornithology, wildlife conservation policy, hunting and wildlife management. He's a professor and a writer, and this book, Home Place, is just released, so we're going to be talking to him about his new book and his work. Hi there, Drew. How are you?
I'm fine, Heidi. How are you?
I'm okay. You know, it's an interesting time we're in, and
Yeah.
I just before I came on, I saw something. I just wanted to read what you wrote this morning on Facebook. You said, apparently, I need to live up in a tree, stand where birds and beasts can keep me occupied, because I keep waking up in a cold sweat with thoughts of what's to come. The 2016 travesty, progress forward about to be undone. Makes me angry one moment, then sad enough to cry. Be warned, just ahead are words that for some might offend. But then, what have I to lose? A bunch of haters who didn't care about offending everyone else on November 8th and flushed hope in a single election. So here's a poem you just wrote. I'm counting down the days to January 20th, when once more I'll get to be a nigger again. I'm sorry to say that word. Claim my relegation to third-class citizen. Glory, hallelujah. I'll claim my constitutionally accurate 3/5 of a man. It'll be a glorious day. I think maybe I'll celebrate by doing a soft shoe, maybe eat some watermelon, scarf down some fried chicken while I'm shuckin' and jivin'. If I'm lucky, I'll get pulled over for broken taillights, even more. I'm looking forward to much more police brutality, 'cause that'll be the way. The new Orange King evens up the score. He'll keep his empty promise and make America great once more. Oh, what a glorious, hood-wearing, hate-filled inauguration that will be. All the towel heads, wetbacks, and coons like me will have to step back for the old new white supremacy. With the right ones now in control, all smug and bought in, Newt, Ryan, the Bannon racist cannon, that loudmouthed hate bag, Ingraham, now on the neo-fascist team. Look, it's KGB Putin belly bumping with the orange-tinted king. Soon enough, they'll be carpet bombing the world, now that they're the best of tyrant friends. You'll get what you wanted, America, what you voted or stayed home for. A week or so back, guns, God, and hate. That's the change you selected. A much better USA. It'll be perfect, barefooted baby carrying women, people in boxes by skin color, and gays will be fags like they used to be. Why bother with decency? You're in charge now. Screw that whole golden rule bullshit. Only weak sickos love their brother. I just can't wait for all the injustice, the harassment, the intolerance to begin. I'm counting down the days to the hour when the Donald gets in. Be happy, they say it. Get over it. You didn't win. Yep, the rest of us are effed. But for those who selected by vote or by apathy, didn't even go to the polls, it'll be just like good old times. You were missing happy days, 1950, all over again. Sorry, but I can't just get over all those votes for hate and ignorance. People who say they aren't racist, but they voted for one just the same. It's shaken my faith in my neighbor, made me question who's really a friend. Unfortunately for me and my black skin, I don't have the privilege of not feeling the pain. Oh, that is powerful stuff.
Well, thanks for giving it voice, Heidi. I have been waking up at odd hours thinking about just sort of the current situation and where we are, and sort of coming off of telling my story and sort of being hopeful and sort of a gathering of this convergence around, I don't know, loving the land. That now it feels somewhat different. It feels like a little bit of backsliding, as my grandmother used to say. So those are words that were born probably about 4 a.m. this morning, and they ended up on social media about mid-morning. So that's how I write a good bit, actually, is sort of thoughts that come to me in sort of half wakened state. But now it's important, as we say, to stay woke.
Extraordinary poem and a very, very painful moment for so many of us, and particularly, for people of color right now. It's just truly frightening time, and we don't know what's coming, but it certainly doesn't. It's not a friendly face, right? It's really scary, and backsliding for sure. So you started out with this very kind of hopeful book you just released.
Mm-hmm.
And the title's interesting. So why use the word colored man? That's an older term, right?
Yeah, it is. I use the word in part because I think we're all colored. We're all of some hue. The sand that's in the ground, the clay, the loam, they all color us. The rivers that run by us, the ocean that we reside by, all of it sort of colors us. So I see colored, first of all, as being an inclusive term. And so using it in sort of that irony, hoping to bring people in who know that word, maybe are a little offended by it, maybe wondering why I would use it. So, oddly enough, using it at this point in time, or using it all those years ago when I started writing this book, and really thinking about the term being an inclusive one, not just of human beings to human beings, but human beings to the environment, that we are somehow colored by the environments that nurture us.
Right.
So soil, air, water, wildlife, all of those are the hues that make up all of us.
So you write, it's a memoir. I have a couple of questions for you. You're a scientist. Why memoir?
Wow. Well, because I've spent most of my career collecting data, and a memoir is essentially auto data collection, I guess. One collects the memories of one's life to put forward in a way, not just to tell sort of a singular story, but hopefully a story that generates both sympathy and hopefully empathy from others. And that there are the stories that each of us has that's original, but then there always overlaps. And I like to think of humans, I like to think of our existences as spheres, and in those spheres there are these overlaps, these sort of Venn diagrams that define who we are. So in telling my story and writing my memoir, hopefully having other people see themselves in being rural, or being Southern, or being Black, or being a bird lover, or being a hunter, being all of those things. They are all the things that make up me, but they're also portions of me that not only come from others, but that perhaps other people can find some commonality with.
So what is I read your book, but I want to hear from you. If you could articulate, is the Black male experience different in nature from, say, someone of a different race or a different gender? Are you trying to articulate a particular experience because of your gender and your race?
Well, yes and no. I think the experience of just being joyful in nature, of reveling in a bird's flight, or the bounding of a white-tailed deer, or autumn leaves falling, or sunrises and sunsets, all of those appreciations are things that we can hold in common, regardless of our hue, of our skin color. But then being out in it, and especially in the South, there's a different sort of lean to the land as a Black American, and understanding the environment that I came up in I was preceded by my ancestors, some of who were enslaved on the land and were forced to work the land and forced to have a relationship with nature that really tinted their view of it. And so as a black man, those things are constantly at play. Those things that I have in common with others, again, the enjoyment of nature, the beauty of it, the solace and sustenance that it gives. But then beyond that, too, being a black man out in nature and maybe sometimes being in places where you may not be welcome, or where that people do a double take because you're out there and they haven't seen someone or anyone who looks like you doing what it is that you're doing. So it's sort of there are these dual tracks, that carry the story of who I am as a naturalist and an ornithologist and a nature lover. And then, there's the other track of me being a black man and doing it. And then there's, kind of this third track of where you are, of where I am, which is the South. And those three rails together, sometimes can be, can have dramatic sorts of contrasts that hopefully make the story more interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I teach a lot of nature literature, and there's obviously sort of a white male relationship to nature, the kind of Western guy, and I mean the whole Robinson Crusoe story on forward, sort of conquering nature, and it's historically a white male colonizer, right, moving forward to sort of the individual who is the Wild West guy who can conquer and goes through, he kills Indians and can live alone and can and sort of lives by himself up in the mountains and all that kind of past lore, and then you have the Rachel Carsons and all these women writers who also and generally white women writers, that tradition of having that connection to the land, and it's a different sensibility, but it's unusual to have a black male voice in that genre.
Yeah, it is, and I have to, when people ask me who my role models are, I have to go first to my parents and to my father, who is a farmer and somewhat of an outdoorsman, and to my mother, who is a biology teacher. But then for someone who looks like me, I suppose it would be George Washington Carver, who sort of had that bent. But really, I've leaned most heavily on Aldo Leopold. And I tell folks that, a dead white guy that I never knew shaped my life in very significant ways because of his love for nature and the way that he communicated that and the importance that it's had in our consideration for caring for the land, and that at the crux of all of that is this four-letter word called love. And so, that sort of construct of white male in the wild world is some of that, admittedly, I've gravitated to. I love being out in faraway wild places, and it spiritually edifies me to be out there. But as a black man, I also have certain considerations in being in those places that those folks never had to have.
Right.
And so being away, as much as people want to think about the South as sort of a difficult place sometimes for black folks to be, I mean, I've been out in the middle of the Bitterroot Range in Montana, just sort of reveling in the wonder of that amazing place, and had a pickup truck drive up behind me with the biggest Confederate flag I've ever seen. And so that instantly changed my range map, as I would like to say. I'm a person who's always seen himself as kind of a black bird, and so my range map is constantly changing with sort of the suitability of the place. Are the people there amenable to me being there? What's the landscape like? What's the social landscape like? How do I have to consider that? And that's a big part of who I am, and a big part of what I write about in the book, and hopefully going forward.
And do you, I hate to say this, but do you feel like you're a role model for kids? Because there's a whole issue of universities not being diverse enough, and students needing to see, professors of all colors, and people from different backgrounds, and that's really important. It's not just a sort of the old school white male professor, right?
Yeah,
Especially in science.
Yeah, it is important, Heidi, because the world that these young people will inhabit and eventually run is a different world than the one that I or you grew up in. And so, I tell folks all the time that a big part of inclusion is not simply having a more diverse student body, but it's also for those students who are currently in the majority to see that there are others with different life experiences who may not look like them that are able to add to their educational experience to sort of expand their ranges. And so for them to hear about issues of race and culture within the context of conservation is important. And that's not forwarded a lot. There aren't a whole lot of uh, Black American wildlife ecologists to sort of speak to those sorts of issues. So I think, when you have the opportunity to expand what students have to learn, have to sort of think about, then that ought to be part of the conversation, because it's certainly a part of the national conversation in almost every single realm of endeavor. As our demography changes, it's important for people to think about new populations and how we're going to address the coming issues of conservation, of climate change, and all of those sorts of things.
Well, we have to end, but I really I'm so excited about your book, and I'm excited about your message and what you're doing. So, we're hoping you're going to come visit. We're trying to figure that out. But in the meantime, I hope you're able to speak around the country, because it is, you are, unfortunately, I have to say, like, you're a model of what's possible. And I know from my students who come from very urban settings, the idea of being a wildlife ecologist is not automatic, no matter what color they are, but they certainly don't think that's even a possibility, or what would that mean and what would that look like. So I'm really excited about what you're doing, and I think it's very, very important. And memoir is also so accessible. You don't have to be a scientist to read it. It's for everyone, and it will get your experience, and it's very personal and very meaningful. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Heidi, for the time, and I would love to come up to Stony Brook sometime and check things out face to face.
Oh, we'd love that. So we just spoke with J. Drew Lanham, who has a new book out called Home Place: Memoirs of a Colored Man's Love Affair with Nature. Just a fascinating look at, this new relationship that is described in a memoir of this Black male scientist, conservationist, wildlife ecologist, and his very touching and meaningful relationship with nature, and what it means to be a colored person in nature, and also what it means to be a Black male scientist in a world that is predominantly white. So in today's world, this is a really important topic, and we thank him so much for coming on. This is Heidi Hutner with Coffee with H2. Thanks so much.